From a rainy alley to galactic harmony. How one human changed two worlds. The girl in the alley. The rain in New Singapore's undercity never really fell, it drifted. It hung in the air like cold static, catching the riot of neon lights above and refracting them into a fractured rainbow that shimmered over puddles and polished steel. The upper levels of the arcology were all gardens glass and quiet wealth. Down here, the only green was in the mold along the walls. Sergeant John Kerr moved through the market lane with the easy gait of a man used to walking into trouble. His Aegis-class combat suit whispered as it adjusted temperature and filtered the air, HUD icons pulsing in the corner of his vision, green indicators for heart rate, suit integrity, environmental stability. The smell of the street still managed to bleed through the filter's wet concrete burnt oil from vendor carts and the layered aromas of half a dozen alien cuisines. Sergeant Kerr. The voice in his helmet was smooth polite, his suit's AI. Command requests your presence at Colonial Defense Force HQ in 2 hours. Noted. John muttered, eyes scanning the crowd automatically. Mostly dock workers. A few off-duty miners, a cluster of tourists who had made the wrong turn and knew it. He was about to keep moving when he saw her. At first, she was just another figure in the shadows hunched still. But the moment caught his attention, the way a sniper's glint might wrong place, wrong posture. She was crouched against a wall in a narrow alley, where a flickering sign barely lit the cracked concrete. Her skin was a deep ocean blue, gleaming wet under the drizzle, her head bare and smooth, reflecting faint points of light. And she was eating off the ground, not in some casual desperate snatch-and-go way. No, she was using both hands to scrape up the remnants of a discarded food container, drawing each fragment to her lips with quiet precision. Her clothing, torn, dirt-stained, and clearly made for a smaller frame than her own, hung loose on her. The undercity had its share of beggars, but this scene hit John like a sucker punch. Maybe it was the way people passing by deliberately averted their eyes, stepping wide around her like she was contagious. Maybe it was the unshaken dignity in her movements, even crouched over garbage. Without thinking, John reached into a storage compartment on his suit and pulled out a synth cola. He didn't even look at the label, just the weight in his glove, the cold against his palm. "Hey," he called. She flinched but looked up, and he tossed the can. It arced through the dim light, and her hand shot up like a striking serpent snatching it mid-air. She examined the object with quick darting eyes, fingers tracing the pull tab, before she snapped it open. The hiss of carbonation was followed by the low, urgent sound of someone drinking like they'd been thirsty for days. "Easy," John said, stepping closer. "There's more where that came from." She lowered the empty can slowly, almost reluctantly. Her eyes iridescent, like shifting pearls, met his through the faint mist. The voice that came out was melodic, even with its rough edge. "Why?" John shrugged, servos in his shoulders whirring softly. "Because I can. I'm John, and you are." Her gaze flicked down, then back up. "Ditya." He tilted his head. "Just Ditya." "Yes." "All right. Just Ditya," he said, already pulling something else from his suit, a wrapped chocolate bar. He peeled it open and held it out. She snatched it with speed born of habit, but instead of biting immediately, she examined the strange dark brown rectangle. "What is it?" "Earth chocolate. Try it." The first bite was small, careful. The second was not. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly, and John felt a small smile tug at the corner of his mouth until a piece fell to the ground, and she instinctively bent to eat it off the wet concrete. "Whoa! Hey!" John crouched beside her, his visor retracting so she could see his face. "You don't have to do that. That's not right." She paused, chocolate smudging her lower lip. "It is what I know, what I have always known. No self-pity, just fact." John studied her for a moment. "How long have you been here?" 3 Earth years, she said softly, "since the evacuation of Fudikala Prime. No one hires a refugee without credentials, especially one." She gestured to herself. Who lives like this? The crowd shifted beyond the mouth of the alley, his HUD tagging two figures as potential threats, but he ignored them. "Come with me," he said, holding out a hand. She eyed it like it might burn her. "Why would you help me?" "Because it's right," he said simply, "and because no sentient being should have to eat off the ground." He grinned faintly. "Besides, I know this great burger joint just around the corner. Best spice fries in the undercity. They'll knock your socks off." Her lips curved in the barest hint of a smile. "You are strange for a human." "I'll take that as a compliment." After a long hesitation, she reached out and placed her cold, damp hand in his gloved one. Her grip was lighter than he expected, but there was strength there. As they stepped back into the crowd, John's mind flicked unbidden to the strangest part. It wasn't just that he was leading her to food. It was the sudden, unshakable sense that he'd just stepped into something far bigger than a good deed on a rainy night. The taste of dignity. The undercity's main thoroughfare felt different with DTA walking beside him. John noticed how the crowd reacted to her, the subtle shifts of posture, the murmured words in alien tongues he didn't need his translator to interpret. The more venomous ones didn't even whisper. A human walking with a Fudicalan refugee drew looks like he'd just decided to escort a plague carrier through a wedding. He tightened his grip on her hand just slightly. She flinched at first, then relaxed. Big Al's intergalactic grill sat on the corner of a market square, its flickering neon sign depicting an oversized human chef flipping a burger the size of a hovercar. The smell hit them before they crossed the threshold, sizzling meat, roasted spice blends, the faint tang of Martian vinegar in the fry oil. As the door hissed open, the conversation inside faltered. John felt it, the drop in noise, the shifting glances. The Martian host behind the counter, four eyes blinking in sequence, stepped forward quickly. "Sir," the host began, lowering his voice to something meant to sound polite, "I must protest." "Save it," John cut him off, voice going flat. "2 for dinner, private booth, and if anyone's got a problem with my guest." He let his hand rest on the butt of his pulse pistol, just long enough for the meaning to settle in. "They can take it up with me." The host swallowed hard, his upper set of eyes darting toward Ditya, then back to John. "Of course, right this way." The booth was tucked in the far corner, half hidden by a curved partition of holographic bamboo. A warm glow from the table's embedded light cast their faces in soft tones. John removed his helmet, setting it down beside him. "Do you always threaten restaurant staff?" Ditya murmured as she slid into the booth. "Only when they deserve it," he replied. "Now." He flicked the menu toward her. "Let's see what you think of an actual cheeseburger." When the food arrived, she stared at the plate as though it were a museum exhibit. The burger, double-stacked beef melted cheese lettuce, crisp from a hydroponic garden, steamed gently. The fries, golden and dusted with a spice mix, Al guarded like a state secret, sat in a neat pile. Her first bite was tentative, the second was not. Her eyes widened in slow surprise, and she set the burger down carefully. She reached for a fry. Crunch. Her head tilted. She chewed, slowly swallowed, then said in a tone halfway between wonder and analysis, "The salt is percussion. It strikes first sharp and bright, then the warmth that is woodwind filling the middle space. And the aftertaste." She closed her eyes briefly. Brass, bold, resonant, lingering. John stared at her. "Most people just say yum." On Fudicalan Prime, she explained she had been a resonance curator at the Grand Archive of Cultural Harmonics. Her people preserved their heritage through multisensory experiences, weaving taste, sound, color, and emotion into compositions. "We created symphonies you could eat, paintings you could hear, dances you could taste." John leaned forward, fascinated despite himself. "How does that work?" She hesitated, then said, "May I demonstrate?" At his nod, she gestured toward the fries. "Close your eyes." Feeling faintly ridiculous, he obeyed. Her voice, when it came, was rhythmic, a melody that seemed to hum just under his skin. Hear the crisp percussion like the first strike of timpani. Feel the salt brass bold and commanding. Now, the spices bloom, each note entering like a new section of the orchestra strings woodwinds, each adding its voice. Taste becomes sound. Sound becomes color, color becomes memory. The crunch of the fry in his mouth was suddenly more than texture. The salt didn't just hit his tongue, it rang. The spices moved through him like a chord progression. When he opened his eyes again, she was watching him intently. There was a glimmer there, something he hadn't seen in the alley. Dignity. That, he said honestly, was incredible. You just turned fast food into fine art. She lowered her gaze, but her mouth curved slightly. It is nothing compared to the true harmonics we once created. You're wrong, he said without thinking. If anything, they're the ones missing out. You've got something special. For the next hour they talked. She told him about the destruction of her world, the burning of archives that had stood for 3 millennia. He told her about Earth's art, from Renaissance paintings to VR installations. She was amused at the idea of museums where the exhibits couldn't be eaten. At one point she said, imagine the Mona Lisa as a soup course. John chuckled. Why not? She's already got a mysterious smile. Might as well make it taste mysterious too. The moment lingered warm and unexpectedly easy. But when he suggested visiting a new art installation at the Orbital Gallery next week, her expression fell. I cannot, she said, gesturing to her ragged clothes. They would not allow me in. Then tomorrow we fix that, John said simply. New clothes, a place to stay, whatever it takes. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Why would you do this for me, truly? He held her gaze. Because I see you, Ditya. Not the refugee in the alley. The curator who can turn a French fry into a symphony. You deserve better than this. Her hand trembled as it reached across the table, fingers brushing his. Your kindness. It resonates at a frequency I have never known before. He smiled. Says the woman who just made me experience fast food as high art. Speaking of which, he flagged the waiter. You need to try chocolate lava cake. If a French fry is an orchestra, this might be an entire opera. A fusion is born. The morning in New Singapore's shopping district was a different world from the undercity bright promenades under a vaulted glass canopy, the skyline of crystalline towers shimmering beyond. Ditya walked beside John. He'd lowered her hands clasped in front of her. The night before, he'd arranged for her to stay at a CDF-approved refugee shelter. She was clean now, the grime and rain washed away, but still in the same tattered clothes she'd worn in the alley. John stopped in front of a boutique with a sweeping silver facade, Stella Styles. The display mannequins wore gowns that rippled like liquid light, each design shifting hue in slow, hypnotic gradients. First stop, John said, holding the door for her. Time to help you look as elegant on the outside as you already are on the inside. The shop's proprietor, a tall Venusian with skin like polished glass and bioluminescent tattoos, looked Tia over with a single arched brow. Her tone was cool. We specialize in high-end clientele, sir. John pulled a platinum CDF credit chip from his belt and let it catch the light. She's with me. The change was instant. Of course, darling, the Venusian purred, gliding toward the racks. Let's work some magic. What followed was a blur of fabric holographic mirrors and the soft shh of garments sliding from hangers. Ditya emerged from the dressing room in a gown of deep azure silk, threaded with iridescent filaments that shifted with every movement. It clung and flowed in perfect balance, accentuating the lines of her body while complementing her skin tone. She turned to the mirror, her voice soft. It resonates with my natural harmonics. John's mouth went dry for a moment. I didn't know he admitted, but Madame Iris apparently did. Fashion, the Venusian said with a wink, is its own kind of art. John's comlink buzzed. He answered and his face lit up. Perfect. I've got one more stop for us. Binary Beats was New Singapore's premier music and art supply shop. Its walls lined with instruments from every known culture, some of which didn't even look playable by human hands. The air smelled faintly of polished wood, ionized air from synthesizers and old sheet music. The owner, A human named Ray with a grizzled beard, streaked white, greeted John like an old comrade. "Well, if it isn't Kerr. What's the mission this time?" John grinned, combining Foodie Callan harmonic resonance with earth jazz. Ray's eyebrows climbed. "Ambitious, but I think I've got just what you need." Within an hour, they left with a neural link synthesizer, a set of harmonic resonance crystals, a modified holographic projection system, and John's own battered saxophone dusted off from Ray's storage room. John's apartment was in the upper levels of the arcology, a space caught between military precision and artistic chaos. Jazz posters shared wall space with holographic star charts. Shelves held both tactical manuals and dog-eared music theory books. He set the equipment out carefully, handing Ditya the synthesizer first. She touched it like an archaeologist uncovering a relic. "You truly wish to blend our art forms. Why not?" he said, assembling the holographic projector. "Your harmonic resonance showed me things I never imagined. Maybe we can create something that helps others understand too." She began to hum fingers, brushing the resonance crystals. Light shimmered between them, a slow pulse matching the rhythm of her song. John lifted the saxophone, pressing the first note into the air, smooth low curling around her melody. The holographic projector came alive. Light patterns unfurled like silk banners in a solar wind, warm golds with flecks of cobalt shapes, shifting in time with the music. "Now watch," she said, adjusting the crystal alignment. The next harmonic she produced wasn't just heard, it was felt like a warm current brushing over the skin. A taste bloomed at the edge of John's tongue, cinnamon and something floral. His answering sax riff seemed to weave through the sensation, blending, until the two sounds were indistinguishable. "That's incredible," John murmured. "It's like jazz you can touch, and harmonic resonance you can dance to." Ditya replied with a faint smile, swaying gently as they played. As the afternoon stretched on, the music became more than an experiment. Each successful blend brought them closer, their movements unconsciously mirroring one another. When their hands brushed over the same control pad, neither moved away. Ditya's eyes caught his over the glow of the crystals. "Perhaps," she said softly, "we could attempt a more personal harmony." Her next note was different, deeper, intimate, a vibration that seemed to curl around his heartbeat. He met her in kind, the saxophone answering like a voice, leaning close to whisper. When they stopped, the air between them was charged. Around them, the holographic system had captured the moment, a swirling masterpiece of light, sound, and sensation. John's voice was almost a whisper. "Now that is what I call art." From streets to stage 2 weeks later, the nebula pulsed with anticipation. The underground art collective's performance hall was carved into the sublevels of a converted freight hub, its black walls embedded with slow-shifting, holographic constellations. The air smelled faintly of ozone from the sound rigs, layered with incense from a half-dozen alien vendors set up in the lobby. John adjusted his neural interface backstage, the thin contact pads snug against the skin beneath his hairline. Beside him, Ditya calibrated the resonance crystals, her movements precise and unhurried. Tonight, she wore a holographic dress that shifted between deep ocean blue and violet aurora, the flowing patterns making her look like she was walking inside a moving galaxy. "Nervous?" he asked. She didn't look up. "Surprisingly, no. I have performed for thousands before, though never quite like this." John grinned. "You never had me on sax before." That earned a quick musical laugh, one that lit the air more than any hologram could. The performance began with familiar footing, John's low, smooth saxophone notes curling into the room like tendrils of smoke. Ditya responded with her harmonic resonance, subtle at first, her voice threading through his melody. Then came the shift, the innovation they'd been building toward. The holographic system engaged, translating their combined sound into visible light and scent. John's jazz riffs shimmered into warm amber arcs that drifted overhead, carrying the faint smell of roasted coffee and autumn air. Ditya's harmonics spread like waves of silver blue light across the crowd, bringing with them the taste of sweet citrus, and the soft brush of silk against the skin. The audience leaned forward collectively as if they could physically step into the music. John caught sight of her as they played the way she moved now with deliberate grace. No trace of the woman who once curled into herself in the face of stares. Tonight, she commanded the room, her gestures shaping the sensory flow, her eyes bright with purpose. They built toward her signature piece, a daring fusion of earth blues progression and Foodie Callan mating harmonics, an intricate emotional resonance pattern traditionally performed only during bonding rituals. She'd warned him it was intense. She hadn't exaggerated. The notes hit the crowd like a wave-longing joy, the ache of connection. The room swayed as one organism, hundreds of beings sharing a crafted emotional space. When the final note faded, silence held for exactly 3 seconds before the room erupted. Applause, cheers, even the tail-rattle percussion of a Trascan audience member at the back. They hadn't even left the stage before a tall human with cybernetic eyes approached, flanked by 2 assistants. His suit was tailored so sharply it could cut glass. Magnificent, he said, voice warm, but carrying the kind of confidence that assumed doors opened for him without knocking. Thomas Sterling Stellar Entertainment. Ditya's spine straightened. We are not interested in commercializing the spiritual aspects of harmonic resonance. Sterling's smile didn't falter. Of course, but surely there's a middle ground. This, he gestured to the space still humming from their performance. This could build bridges between cultures in ways nothing else can. John stepped in before Ditya could refuse outright. We can discuss terms, privately. Sterling's eyes lit, literally the synthetic irises flaring a soft gold. My private restaurant. Sterling Tower. Tomorrow night, dinner and possibilities. Backstage, Ditya arched an eyebrow. The 200th floor of Sterling Tower. Quite a step up from Big Al's. John smirked. Big Al's will always be our special place. But I figured you might enjoy dining somewhere that doesn't serve food in paper bags. Her smile was small but genuine. The food matters less than the company. He reached into his pocket and slid a small keycard across the table. That apartment we looked at last week. It's yours. Already paid the deposit. Her eyes widened. John, worth every credit. You need your own space. A place to create. Though. He leaned closer. I hope you'll still come practice at mine. The moment was interrupted by Ray, who burst in holding his comlink. You two need to see this. You're trending across 3 systems. And he shoved the screen toward them. The Foodie Callan Cultural Preservation Society just issued a statement praising your work. I think you just made history. Harmony of 2 success came like a tidal surge. Within a month, their names were everywhere. Performance streams replayed across the Solnet, invitations to festivals on Luna and Titan, and a surprising contract with a therapeutic center specializing in PTSD. The fusion of jazz and harmonic resonance wasn't just entertainment, it was healing. They barely had time to breathe between shows, but John insisted they keep 1 night a week for themselves. No bookings, no public appearances, just music in their own space. It was on one of those nights with the city lights spilling in through his apartment's wide windows that he decided to give her the gift. Ditya sat cross-legged on the floor, resonance crystals spread around her in a loose arc. She was experimenting with a new composition, something soft and looping like water flowing over stones. John watched from the kitchen for a moment, the sound wrapping around him like a warm current. He crossed the room and crouched in front of her. Got something for you. Her hands stilled over the crystals. Another piece of Terran chocolate, she teased. Better. He placed a small velvet-lined box between them and opened it. Inside, resting against black fabric, was a crystal the color of moonlight on deep water. It was cut in a precise spiral lattice, each curve calibrated to resonate with 2 very specific biological frequencies. She inhaled sharply. A bonding crystal, custom-made on New Foodie Callan, he said. They told me it's traditionally used in commitment ceremonies. It's rare, I know. Her fingers hovered over it before she finally lifted it from the box. The moment her skin touched the surface, the crystal hummed, and the hum deepened as John touched it too. The sound wasn't just heard, it pressed gently against his chest, filling him with a flood of emotion that wasn't entirely his own. He felt her joy, her gratitude, and something else, something warmer, more dangerous, like the first swell of music before the crescendo. She closed her eyes, letting the resonance wash through them both. "John?" Her voice trembled. "What is it?" Her hand drifted to her abdomen almost unconsciously. "There is a new harmony inside me, one I have never felt before. It's a blend, yours and mine." It took him a second. His heart skipped. "You mean?" "Yes." She opened her eyes, and they were brighter than any crystal in the room. "I believe I am carrying our child." For a beat, the only sound in the room was the low thrumming connection of the crystal between them. Then John laughed, a full, unguarded laugh that startled even himself. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead. "Intense," he said with a grin, "is kind of our thing." The next weeks blurred into a rhythm of travel, performance, and planning. Sterling's proposal took shape, a galaxy-wide tour, yes, but also partnerships with hospitals and cultural exchange programs. DTTIA was cautious, always protective of her people's traditions, but Sterling surprised them both by respecting her boundaries. One evening after a rehearsal, they found themselves on the balcony of her new apartment. The city glittered below air traffic, sliding between the towers like glowing fish through coral. She leaned against him, one hand over her stomach, the other holding his. "Do you ever think," she said quietly, "about how this began one night? One can of soda, and now..." He squeezed her hand. "Now we're building something the galaxy's never seen before, and it's not just music anymore." She smiled, and in the fading light, it looked like the smile of someone who knew exactly how rare her kind of hope was, and wasn't afraid to hold on to it. The bonding ceremony, the orbital gardens, hung above New Singapore like a crown of glass and crystal. Originally designed for agricultural research, the domes had long since become the city's most coveted venue for diplomatic banquets, state ceremonies. And now something no one had ever witnessed before, the first official human-foodie Kalan bonding. From the balcony of the preparation suite, John could see the crowd assembling below. The guest list read like the opening credits of a political epic. Stellar Entertainment's top brass representatives from the Galactic Cultural Council, ambassadors from half a dozen worlds. And most remarkably, the Foodie High Harmonist herself, traveling from New Foodie to officiate the union. "You look like a man who's just realized what he signed up for," Ray muttered beside him, tugging at the unfamiliar folds of his formal jacket. As John's best man, the old musician had even learned the proper harmonic tones for the ceremony, though he grumbled about it every step. "I'm not nervous," John said honestly. "Just amazed. A year ago I was running patrols and playing jazz in my apartment. Now look at this." The music began, not the standard Terran wedding march, but a hybrid composition Ray had helped arrange. Earth classical strings blended seamlessly with Foodie resonance harmonics. The first notes rippled through the garden's bioluminescent flora, causing petals to open in waves of color that matched the melody. And then she appeared. Ditya's gown was a living masterpiece. Its fabric, grown in bioengineered looms, responded to her emotional harmonics, shifting between deep ocean hues and bursts of shimmering silver. Across the bodice, delicate patterns of light told their story: a rainy alley, a can of soda, a burger shared in defiance of stairs, music flowing between two strangers until it became something more. Her growing belly was not hidden, but celebrated, a jewel at the center of the design, highlighted by soft pulsing light. "By the stars," Ray breathed. "She's conducting the flowers." Indeed, with every step, the garden's blooms shifted in sync with her harmonic field, creating an undulating wave of living color that moved with her toward the arch of resonating crystals where John stood. The high harmonist's voice carried both melody and weight. "We gather today to witness the binding of frequencies, the joining of harmonies that should never have met, yet created something greater than either alone." They exchanged the traditional human vows, first hands clasped around their custom bonding crystal. Every word they spoke was translated into pure emotional resonance, washing over the audience in waves. Even those who didn't understand Terran's standard felt the truth of the promises. John spoke first, his voice steady. "From this day forward, my rhythm follows yours, and my harmony embraces yours." Ditya's reply sent their surrounding flowers into a ripple of pale gold. "From this day forward, my melody finds strength in yours, and our song becomes one." They kissed, and the bonding crystal reached peak resonance. Light exploded across the gardens, every bloom opening in unison. For a few precious seconds, even the non-foodie Callan guests felt the pure joy radiating from the union, a joy that transcended species, language, and history. The reception was as unconventional as the ceremony. Traditional human dancing alternated with foodie Callan harmonic meditations. The wedding cake, designed by Big Al himself, contained flavor harmonics that shifted depending on the taster's species, a fact that left one Martian guest convinced it had been baked just for him. Sterling drifted by at one point, watching the dance floor with a knowing smile. "You've started quite the trend. I've already had inquiries from 17 different species about hosting fusion ceremonies." The high harmonist joined them, her formal robes shimmering faintly. "I have never encountered a hybrid pregnancy with such strong resonance patterns. Your child's harmony is unique." Ditya rested a hand over her belly. "We can feel it growing stronger each day. Sometimes the baby conducts its own little symphonies." John grinned, pulling her closer. "Takes after its mother. And its father's tendency to break with tradition," she teased. Later, when the reception wound down, they escaped into the meditation grove, a quiet corner of the gardens, where only the sound of flowing water and faint harmonic echoes remained. "Remember our first dance?" John asked. "In my apartment when we were experimenting with jazz harmonics. You kept stepping on my resonance patterns," she teased. "And you couldn't understand why humans move their bodies so unnecessarily." Now standing together in the warm glow of the grove, the bonding crystal humming contentedly between them, they swayed without a single misstep. "We're more than cultural ambassadors now," she murmured, guiding his hand to feel a particularly strong harmonic pulse from their child. "We're pioneers. Our child will be proof that harmony can exist between any peoples, if they're brave enough to try." The baby kicked, sending ripples of light through the nearby flowers. "Strong little conductor," John said softly, "already making their mark on the world." The child of two worlds, the birthing chamber at New Singapore's Scenical Medical Center, was unlike any in the galaxy. It had been specially prepared after weeks of consultation between human obstetricians and foodie Callan harmonic midwives. Walls of smooth white polymer curved gently around the space, inlaid with resonance crystals that pulsed softly in time with Ditya's breathing. Above a holographic dome projected a slow swirl of stars, her request so the baby's first sight would be a sky. She floated in a low-gravity suspension field, her gown drifting around her like a halo of blue light. The harmonic sensors embedded in the field translated every contraction into both medical data and a visible ripple of color through the room. John stood beside her, wearing a CDF med support harness that linked him directly to the bonding crystal in her hands. Every pulse she felt he felt, every surge of effort, every spike of emotion it bridged between them in a seamless loop. Dr. Patterson, a human physician with a deep familiarity in cross-species births, studied the holographic readouts. "The baby's harmonics are off the charts," she said, equal parts excitement and focus. "We've never seen resonance patterns like this in utero." "That's our little conductor," John murmured, squeezing Ditya's hand as another wave hit. She tried to laugh, but it caught on a gasp. "Always putting on a show." The harmonic pulse from her body flared brighter than ever, the crystals along the walls glowing like captured lightning. The med monitors chimed in overlapping tones, while the midwives adjusted the resonance fields to guide the frequency flow. Dr. Patterson's voice sharpened. "Here we go. Harmonic convergence has begun." The next moments were unlike anything John had ever experienced, and he'd been in combat in firefights, in zero-G emergencies. The room sang, not with any single melody, but with a cascade of interwoven tones that built toward something inevitable. Light bloomed and folded across the walls. The air itself seemed to carry the texture of sound, and then a flash of resonance so pure it made his skin prickle. The child entered the world, conducting his own arrival symphony, a fusion of human rhythm and Foodie Cullen harmonic structure that filled the chamber with a pattern of light and sound so beautiful that every observer fell silent. "It's a boy," Dr. Patterson announced, then hesitated wonder in her voice. "And he's singing." John stared, unable to move. The infant's first cry wasn't a wail. It was a sustained note, pitch perfect, that made every crystal in the room vibrate in sympathy. His skin was a lighter blue than Ditya's, patterned faintly with iridescent waves that shifted like sunlight through deep water. A full head of black hair shimmered with natural bioluminescent highlights, pulsing faintly with his emotional state. "He's perfect," Ditya whispered, tears bright in her eyes as the midwife placed him in her arms. "Look, John, he has your eyes." They were human in shape, but luminous with the same iridescence as hers, a living bridge between worlds. As the boy blinked up at them, the light in the room dipped and swelled in time with his breathing. "That's new," Dr. Patterson said, recording the phenomenon. "He's influencing the ambient crystal network. That's unprecedented." John didn't care about precedent. He leaned in, pressing his forehead to both of theirs, the bonding crystal between them humming in a perfect three-part chord. 3 days later, they brought their son home to the penthouse. The space had been modified with resonance-dampening panels and playful training crystals to help him learn control of his abilities. They named him Alexander Ryer Harmony, but his Foodie Cullen name was an intricate harmonic pattern that no human throat could replicate. When played correctly on the synthesizer, it made human teeth tingle pleasantly. That first night home, they sat together on the observation deck, Alexander nestled in Ditya's arms. The city stretched out below its lights, reflected in the glassy sea beyond. "From that alley," Ditya said softly to this. John grinned and pulled a familiar can of synth cola from his pocket. "Thought we should celebrate properly." She laughed, accepting it. "You're never going to let me forget, are you?" "Are you kidding?" Best pickup line in history. "Want some soda?" Comes with a side of lifelong happiness and a revolution in galactic culture. Alexander cooed, and the balcony lights shifted to a warm gold in response. The legacy. It started with a call from Sterling. John had just coaxed Alexander into a nap. The baby curled in his bassinet, with one tiny hand still resting on the bonding crystal. Ditya was in the corner, softly humming to stabilize the harmonic field around him. The CEO's holographic projection appeared in the air between them, leaning forward as though the urgency could cross light years. "Have you seen the numbers?" The live stream of Alexander's birth harmony has been viewed by over 2 billion sentients across 3 systems. Every major medical institution wants to study the cross-species implications. And his eyes brightened literally in a synthetic flare. "Don't even get me started on the cultural impact." John folded his arms. "We already told you no exploitation." "Of course," Sterling said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "But hear me out, not exploitation, inspiration. I'm talking about an educational series. Animated stories based on your journey, embracing differences, building bridges." Alexander could be a symbol for mixed-species families everywhere. John's eyes flicked to Tia. She was watching him, unreadable. When Sterling's projection faded, she spoke first. "He has a point. You think we should do it?" She nodded slowly. "Our story could help others. Show them that differences can create something beautiful, that a hungry girl and a lonely soldier can change the shape of a galaxy." John smiled faintly, more like a human who saw past prejudice to offer dignity and love. "Because of us," she corrected, gently touching his cheek. "Because we composed this together." Alexander stirred his tiny voice, releasing a pure harmonic note that made the balcony's resonance lights flare in soft gold. Weeks later, the three of them stood on the open promenade of the orbital gardens again, not for a wedding this time, but to receive the Galactic Cultural Preservation Award. The high harmonist herself presented it, her voice resonating through the entire dome. This collaboration is proof that art is not bound by biology, that harmony can be found between any peoples willing to listen. Dita accepted the crystal-etched plaque with a bow, her free arm holding Alexander close. The child's hair shimmered in shifting patterns, drawing delighted murmurs from the crowd. John kept his remarks brief. This award isn't for us. It's for anyone who's ever been told they don't belong, and for anyone willing to prove them wrong. That night, back in the penthouse, they sat together on the observation deck. Below them, the city was alive with light. Above the stars, scattered across the black like an unfinished melody. "You know," John said, "I think our little maestro might end up composing something even greater than we ever could." Alexander reached for the bonding crystal between them. The moment his tiny fingers touched it, the crystal sang, not just with the harmonics of his parents, but with a new chord, fresh and bright, carrying a promise none of them could yet name. The light show that followed spilled over the balcony down into the streets. Passers-by stopped looking up in wonder at the impossible music shimmering in the air. Ditya leaned into John's shoulder, her voice warm. "The galaxy won't know what hit it." John kissed her hair. "Good. Let's make sure it never forgets." From a rain-soaked alley to a symphony of three, they had proven what a single act of kindness could become and left the galaxy humming with the possibility of perfect harmony.